the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're well. My name is Jerome, and I am the Sane Environmentalist. I am going to be taking over the Thursday show on the Age of Fission radio. Look forward every week to my voice and what I have to put forth for you. My mission is to educate people and give them resources that they can go to take action in order to protect ourselves, or at least attempt to protect ourselves from the ongoing hideous nastiness that the nuclear industry, as well as the chemical industries and general mining, etc., are unleashing upon our whole species and every other species. So today I'm going to start out with a shout out. Okay, this shout out is going to Donna Gilmore. She's a strong, very courageous woman. She has an organization she has created. It's called Sanonofree Safety. Their website is SANONOFRESAFETY.org. I suggest you go there. She's got videos. She's got handouts. There's so much information there. The most important thing that I can think of right now is House Bill H.R. 3053, the most pertinent, critical issue that we need to take action on today is this issue. What this is it's a bill that they're basically running through the railroading through. And what it does is it changes the language a lot in another bill, in the nuclear waste storage bill. And so what it is it preempts or jeopardizes existing federal, state, local water and air rights. And it removes the rights to oversight, input, and transparency, and other rights from the citizens. We lose the ability to challenge them when they decide to put waste wherever they want. It removes storage, transport, safety requirements, and these are needed to prevent radioactive leaks. It provides inadequate funding to transport and store nuclear fuel waste. And nuclear fuel waste, as well as the waste from processing nuclear fuel, is the most deadly stuff that has ever been created on this planet. It literally has the ability to end life on this planet. Keep that in mind. I think people really fail to realize, in our short-sightedness, in our we live 100 years-ness, that there's a bigger picture that goes beyond our life, okay? And it goes beyond our species. you know, and an understanding that everything is all connected together. Everything is one big, giant system. And what we need to do is understand our power that we have by creating these substances to destroy it. And I really think it's not a real thing for most people. So moving on, it makes federal reimbursement for nuclear waste storage discretionary instead of mandatory. And what this does is it creates an incentive to these companies and these contractors who are taking care of the nuclear waste and storing it in a safe way. It removes it's like, well, we could pay you or not. It's like, well, we could do a good job or not. Because what is it to us? I only live 100 years, okay? They're firmly in that frame set. But so what? You know, this isn't gonna kill all life before I'm dead. And I'm making money. So it allows ownership of nuclear fuel waste at existing nuclear facilities to be transferred to the Department of Energy, making us vulnerable to inefficient funding for nuclear waste storage. Current Department of Energy nuclear waste sites have repeatedly leaked radiation into the ground and air and water because of this. There's a handout available at sanonofreesafety.org. I suggest that you get this handout. I suggest you take the action in this handout, especially if you live in California, Washington, or Oregon, or even Alaska. Anybody on the west coast of the United States needs to take action on this. You know, and on that note, on the note of the ocean, we have the Pacific Ocean. And there's currently something going very wrong all along the American Pacific coast. Almost every day, there is a catastrophic animal die-off. And this is being reported, but nobody knows why. An abbreviated list of the critters that are being washed ashore dead are sea stars, bluefin tuna, sardines, anchovies, herring, sea lions, marine birds, red king crabs, pelicans, Pacific oysters, sockeye salmon, herring, plankton, the base of the food chain, anchovies, again, whales, tuna and albacore, and more recently, tuna crabs. So what's going on is the destructive forces of this product that I was just talking about, which everybody's ignoring, are unleashing havoc on the ecosystem of our aquatic world. And that is the base of everything else. Plankton is the base. If you remove plankton, you remove life on Earth. Keep that in mind, and it won't take long. If you were to remove all the plankton in all the oceans right now, within 25 years, life on land would not be possible, and the oceans would be way dead. And we're not talking, that would be gone forever. That's it. You might have some molds and funguses that would have to re-evolve, but that's what would happen. And we're killing the plankton with radioactive debris and waste. Fukushima, which is continuously pumping huge, amazingly huge amounts, and they're lying. I went and checked out their recent numbers for their harbor and the ground wells there, and they're like, oh, that's almost no radiation, and it's like, I'm not buying it. No. If you can't get a robot in there, don't tell me the groundwater nearby is safe. So that's all going right into the ocean, and if you look at the currents, you'll see it going right across. And by the way, I have a YouTube channel, the Sane Environmentalist, and you can go there, and I do all kinds of videos. I've done research. I extensively covered the Fukushima incident extensively, hours and hours of videos. So check that out. And so, yeah, we're losing life on our Earth. You know, we are killing our planet. Literally, we are literally killing our planet. You know, I was looking at the predictions for this year for the salmon runs, and I was amazed that this is according to fishbio.com. Poor predictions. 2017 salmon forecast. They estimate the preseason projections for the 2017 season are not promising. The forecast estimates a total of 230,700 Sacramento River fall run Chinook salmon adults in the ocean this year, which is the lowest projected total since 2009. The Klamath River ocean fishery has a projected population of 54,200, the lowest on record. And that's just two places. So if you look at it in totality, you can see the salmon are dying. Those are kind of top of the food chain critters. Salmon are dying and plankton is dying. A little interesting story about salmon. Lonnie Clark gave me a simple but effective Geiger counter about 4 or 5 months ago. And we were barbecuing. It was somebody's birthday, and we were barbecuing, and I was barbecuing steaks, and I had a big chunk of salmon, like 6 inches wide by a foot long and an inch thick. And it was beautiful. And I'm like, And I just, for whatever reason, my head said, I wonder if it's radioactive. And then I'm like, nah, it couldn't be radioactive. And on the Jerome, you have a Geiger counter. I went inside, I got my Geiger counter. I stood away from the fish. I got a background. Background was 1.1 to 1.2. I went over to the salmon, held it within a quarter of an inch of the salmon, and it took about 10 and 15 seconds, but all of a sudden it went up to 4, 4.5, 5.6. I'm like, 5.6? That is higher than I've ever read on this Geiger counter. And so I'm like, something's got to be wrong. So I went back again and held it away from the fish, and it dropped back down to 1.1. Back to the salmon, 5.6. So it's like, okay, this fish is radioactive. Wow. What's in it that's making it radioactive? Wow. I'm not eating fish. And besides, with the low levels of salmon, you don't want to eat the fish, you know? You don't want to contribute to the destruction, the further destruction of that particular species. So don't eat salmon, don't eat tuna, don't eat anything out of the ocean right now, because A, the ocean can't take it, and B, it's radioactive. Eat something out of some other body of water if you need something aquatic. But so yeah, I mean, look at it. You know, bottom of the food chain, top of the food chain. And, you know, that's, and TEPCO, I've been looking at TEPCO, and according to Google Earth, it looks exactly the same as it did a year and a half ago, but I looked at their live cam, and okay, I see they are doing stuff over there. It looks like they're now constructing some sort of a modular dome-shaped assembly on the top of Unit 3 reactor. It's pretty much starting at the end of the used fuel pool, and it's going to go straight in from the coast, perpendicular to the coast, all the way across the building. It looks like they're putting sections at one end of the roof, and they have a track of some sort, and they're pushing it to the other end of the roof and hooking it together. And I'm thinking that it's Unit 3 was the MOX fuel. Unit 3 is the one that blew up. That one, there's a higher percentage chance that there's way more radiation there than they're letting on, but it's hard to tell. But they're building that, and that's probably, you get something to hold a crane so that they can unfuel that fuel pool, and then further maybe inspect the core of the reactor, you know. But yeah, Fukushima is a hot mess. It will continue to be a hot mess. It is perhaps, unless somebody comes up with a technological miracle, the end game for life on our planet. If it's not like a 3 Mile Island or even a Chernobyl, okay, it's ongoing. Those cores are still down there. They're still hot. They can't get close enough to the building to even check them. They can't get a robot close enough to even check them. There's so much radiation. One thing about radiation that people often fail to remember is that radiation destroys not only humans and life, but it destroys materials as well, especially at that high level. There's neutrons and things flying off of there with such energy levels that they hit concrete and they knock the atoms apart in the concrete. You know, and I think they turn it to hydrogen gas. That's what happens. So they knock protons loose, I think, and it turns the part of the concrete to hydrogen gas, and the concrete turns to dust and pebbles. That's what's going on. A hot mess, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So that is the folly of nuclear power, especially in our oceans, you know. And what have we brought humanity? What have we brought? It's hard for me to remain the sane environmentalist sometimes. I oftentimes want to just scream, but I've learned that the best way to get your message across is to whisper it. If you whisper it, people will really try to listen to what you have to say. If you scream, people turn away. So I did a search for, actually I think I was talking to Lonnie Clark again. Thank you, Lonnie. And she mentioned that they're injecting radioactive waste into fracking sites to create a bigger bang. And I had to go, well, let's look and see. Wow, that's crazy. First, let's use the Google and just see what happens. And sure enough, there came up an article, but it wasn't injecting radioactive waste into a fracking hole. It was the fact that when you inject all the other stuff into a fracking hole, the radioactivity in the water comes out. And when it comes out, well, you got radioactivity now. You know, you got, I think it's, they call it TENORM, okay, oil and gas production waste. This is from the EPA's website. It says, in recent years, they've employed new methods. They combine horizontal drilling and enhanced stimulation. That's what's also known as fracking to them. And the way, and have changed the profile of oil and gas waste, both in terms of radioactivity and the volumes produced. The geologic formations that contain the oil and gas also contain naturally occurring radionuclides, which are referred to as naturally occurring radioactive materials, or NORM. Isn't that a cute acronym? These materials include uranium, thorium, and its decay products, and the decay products of uranium, radium and its decay products, potassium-40, lead-210, and polonium-210. Much of the petroleum and natural gas developed in the U.S. was created in the Earth's crust, and it was the result of decaying life, sea life. And the brine and the salt basically brought the radioactive nuclides to settle out, forming various wastes on the surface of these materials. And also what you get with the equipment they're using is mineral scales inside the pipes that they're using to suck this stuff back out, sludges and sediments, contaminated equipment or components, and produced waters. Okay. And because the extraction process concentrates these naturally occurring radionuclides and exposes them to the surface environment and us, these wastes are classified as technologically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive material, or TENORM. Radium levels in the soil and rocks vary greatly, as do their concentrations in scales and sludges. Radiation levels may vary from background soil levels as high as several hundred picocuries per gram. The variation depends on several factors, and that is the concentration and identity of what's in there, the chemistry of the formation, and the characteristics of the produced wastes. For conventional drilling, there was a study done in 2000 that showed that the petroleum industry generated about 150,000 cubic meters, and that's 260,000 metric tons of waste per year. And that included produced water, scales, sludges, and contaminated equipment. The amount produced at any one oil play varies depending on several factors, including the geologic location, the formation conditions, the type of production operation, is it fracking or just drilling, and the age of the well. In 1988, publication estimates that 30% of domestic oil and gas wells produce some of this TENORM. In surveys of production wells in 13 states, the percent reported high concentrations of radionuclides in the wells, ranging from 90% in Mississippi to none or only a few in Colorado. South Dakota and Wyoming, however, had 20 to 100% of the facilities in every state reporting TENORM in the heaters or the treaters. Produced waters. More than 18 billion barrels of waste fluids from oil and gas are generated annually in the United States. 18 billion barrels of waste fluids, and more than 30% of those are technologically enhanced radioactive materials. And then you got the scale, okay? Inside of all this equipment, the pipes and whatnot that they have to use, you get deposits that form. And these deposits they call scale. And those are even nastier than the liquid or the sludge wastes. And scale is composed of insoluble barium, calcium, and strontium, and other components that precipitate from the water. They're found on the inside of piping or tubing, and they found the highest concentrations of radioactivity in this scale in the wellhead piping and in production piping near the wellhead. The concentrations were as high as tens of thousands of picocuries per gram. However, The largest volume of scale occurs in three areas. Either the water lines associated with the separators that separate the gas from the oil and the water, the heaters or treaters which divide the oil and water phases, or the gas dehydrators, where scale is as thick as 4 inches, tens of thousands of picocuries per gram. And you've got accumulations 4 inches thick. And then they take these pipes when they get too radioactive to work with, and they just throw them in a ditch. Approximately 100 tons of scale per oil well are generated annually in the United States. Think about that. 100 tons of a substance at a gram has tens of thousands of picocuries of radioactivity in it. 100 tons per well. Think how many wells we have. The average radium concentration in scale has been estimated to be 480 picocuries per gram. It can be much higher, as high as 400,000 picocuries per gram, or lower depending on regional geology. Scale and gas wells and equipment can also contain the radon progeny, lead-210, and polonium. The sludge is composed of dissolved solids, and they precipitate out of the water. It consists of oily, loose material. The dried sludge, with a low oil content, looks and feels similar to soil. Oil production processes used in conventional drilling generally they generate an estimated 230,000 metric tons, or 5 million cubic meters of this sludge each year. Like contaminated scale, sludge contains more radium-226 than radium-228. The average concentration of radium in a sludge is estimated to be 75 picocuries per gram. This may vary considerably from site to site, of course, but generally. The concentration of lead-210 is usually relatively low in hard scales, but may be more than 27,000 picocuries per gram in lead deposits and sludge. Contaminated equipment, it varies widely. You can have anything, well, it depends on the type of well, what they're doing. And there's tons of contaminated equipment, contaminated water, contaminated 5 billion barrels of radioactive water a year. Is that not frightening? Yeah, I mean, that, these are just like some of the most pertinent things that I could come up with, and the fact that it's not out there, you don't hear about this stuff. As how many of you listeners, if there are any still, have heard about this? None, I bet. You got to look for this stuff. And when you find it, it's like, oh my God, what have I found? And thank you, Lonnie Clark, for getting me curious about this, because now I know that one of the biggest sources of radioactive pollution on our planet is the oil industry. I've been always like, drill baby drill, let's get the carbon back into the air, and in the big picture, the environment's going to change and things are going to get crazy and a lot of stuff's going to die, but the carbon will be back in the air and that will get back into the ecosystem. But now I'm going, well, hold it. What this is doing is also bringing all this other crap to the surface, and what can we do about that? There again, we need the energy. We are a different species than every other species on this planet. humanity is. Because we need outside stuff to make us live other than just food and water. We can't even drink water from the same hole that an animal would drink it from and be fine, or we get sick and die. We are very different from every other species. We need clothing. We need to cook our food. We need to heat our homes. We need to cool our homes. We're not suited for this environment at all. That's why every other species runs around in its skin and is completely comfortable and adapted to whatever environment it evolved in. We, on the other hand, are completely foreign to this environment, and therefore we need clothing, and we need to heat, and we need to cool, and we need to cook, and we need to purify our water. We can't just drink out of a water hole. Go up to a horse and get a couple handsful of water out of its trough, and see what happens. Not a pretty thing. But another horse could walk up, or a cow, or a dog, or a cat, or a bird, and drink that water, and it will get the essence of the water, and it would be fine because it's adapted to that. So, keep in mind that we have a responsibility because of our need to adapt to the planet, and so we use the resources of the planet for that, and that's why we need energy. And B, the power we have because of that to utterly and completely destroy the planet, its whole ecosystem. The planet will be fine, and in 10 million years could evolve again into something sapiens. But, we're getting it to the point where you will have some, like, molds and funguses and algae that'll be able to live, little single-cell things that have almost no DNA. And so they're so simple that you can't really destroy them very easily. And they reproduce faster than you can destroy them. So then you have new DNA that's not destroyed. That might be a misnomer. But that's all that will be left, and then once the radiation levels drop, and that'll be 1 million years from now. I did a thing yesterday, and talking about the newer, now they've got the Generation 3 and Generation 4 nuclear power plants, and what their mission is to create a safer, friendlier, less expensive nuclear power plant. And they're going to use the same fuel bundle technology that they're using today, and it's going to, their thing is, well, we're going to use gravity now, What we're going to have is we're going to have huge pools of water up above the reactor, and these big giant pools of water, there'll be a heat exchanger from the reactor that goes up into these pools of water, and condenses back into water and goes back down into the reactor. And so it's a closed-loop system, and the pool of water, they say, is large enough to handle all the heat from the reactor shut down, not running. Once you drop the control rods and it's shut down, they say this pool would be good for 72 hours in the event of a complete off-grid situation. And I'm thinking, okay, 72 hours. That's questionable. What happens if you get an earthquake and it cracks the pool? What happens if you get an earthquake and it breaks the heat exchanger coming straight off of the reactor, and then the reactor starts venting into this heat exchanger, and the steam comes right out of the heat exchanger into that pool and out, and boils the pool out of the pool into the atmosphere. No. If you're using a pressurized water reactor, you are asking for problems, period. I don't care what generation it is. There is, however, a nuclear solution, I believe. As Arnie Gunderson would say, at least on paper, it looks good. But they call them a fluoride molten salt reactor. And they create a decent amount of energy. They're very complicated, and they're expensive to operate. and they eat plutonium. You can literally grind up fuel pellets, use fuel pellets out of these other reactors, and throw them in this molten salt, thorium molten salt, and it'll react, and it will convert the reactor will actually eat the plutonium. It'll destroy the plutonium, and what you're left with afterwards in the spent whatever it is salt solution is a 300-year half-life product instead of a 240,000-year half-life product. So I think, and when you think half-life, and there's another one that people get confused about, half-life. What is that? What is half-life? The way I look at it is it'll be half as dangerous in 250,000 years. But if it'll kill you in 1 minute, that means it'll kill you in 2 minutes in 250,000 years, and then 4 minutes in 250,000 years after that, and then 8 minutes in 250,000 years after that, and then 16 minutes in 250,000 years after that. Do you see that? Do you see that the 240,000 years is a joke? That those fuel bundles, if you stood literally next to them, unprotected, it would take about a minute for you to get enough radiation to where you would be dead within an hour. It would kill you, okay? So it would turn that in 1 million or so years into 16 minutes now. How long until you got a lifetime? There you go. Half-life is a big joke, and look at it as the amount of time, if you were exposed to it would take to kill you. And then take that by 50% or half in a 240 and then keep adding to it, and it is exponential. But still, if it's that deadly, it's going to be probably 20 million years before those fuel bundles are just metal again and not radioactive until they decay. So we've golly, folks, what can we as citizens do? What can we as citizens do? How can we stop the NRC and the World Nuclear Organization and IAEA from producing and pushing these things when they have this molten salt technology, which is more expensive, and they're not geared up for it? They'd have to build brand new plants, They're going to, with new technology, and that always costs extra money. So they're not willing to build these plants with the new technology because that costs them extra money. And they have no incentive, as I mentioned earlier in this show. They have no incentive at all to do anything. They're not. Why? Why should we? You guys aren't paying us. We make money on the utility end of it, but the fuel's expensive. And now we got to store the waste, and it's our job to store the waste. So that's what's going on there, And so now with some of these, here's another wonderful euphemism: the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research for a safer, healthier environment and a democratization of science. Oh, they want to democratize science, huh? And what is the name of the article? Incineration of radioactive and mixed waste. So now what they're going to start doing is they're going to start incinerating this stuff. And we're talking pipes and everything. Every metals. When they tear down a plant, they're going to incinerate it. When they have medical waste, they're going to incinerate it. And they're saying it's difficult to establish low dose biological effects, and assumptions about exposure are hard to deal with, and the lack of knowledge about non-cancer effects of effects of combinations of pollutants. And then they have the second, that's the first class, which burns parts and pieces and stuff. And now they have another one, okay, where they're burning liquid radioactive waste, i.e. stuff that comes out of the reactor itself, or the processing of fuel, or the processing of plutonium for weapons. Like the tanks at Hanford, they're getting ready to incinerate the liquids that are in the tanks at Hanford. Let's say, for instance, that they can filter out 100% of the radionuclides from the liquids when they incinerate them. Okay? You think that matters to the radionuclides? You think the leftover plutonium and strontium and cesium, arsenic and lead and cadmium and those pollutants care? Think it's going to become any less radioactive? It'll be just as radioactive, but now it'll be concentrated. So you remove this 100 million gallons of liquid waste. Yay, we got rid of it! But you still are left over with some sort of sludge ash product, which is twice as radioactive as the beginning product was. And what are you going to do with that? And as we just discussed, plutonium, 240,000 years to start with. What are you going to do with that? No, there's no plan for that. They've got a plan to incinerate it, but they don't have a plan to deal with the ash products and the melted metal products, which all will... That's the thing about radiation. It has a tendency to want to accumulate in one place. And it does it biologically or physically. And the more that we mess with it, the more it's going to accumulate and the more toxic it will become. So, there again, as citizens, we need to get up. We need to contact people. We need to delay processes. Lonnie Clark was just telling me today, if we delay these processes with the EPA, they'll just not grant a license to this. If there's too much noise from the general public, they will not grant a license because it's just they got to keep. They're just not willing. I don't know why. It's the weirdest thing. Because they have placed the onus on these companies to take care of it themselves. So here's a list of U.S. Department of Energy existing and proposed incinerators. Hanford, Richland, Washington, mixed type, planned. Second one, mixed type, planned at that same facility. INEL, Idaho Falls in Idaho. They've got 2 mixed ones. The Los Alamos, they have a mixed and they have a radiation one. And the radiation one is on standby. Okay. That's in New Mexico. They're getting ready to incinerate high-level radioactive waste. Mound, Miamisburg, Ohio. They're in the permitting process. Oak Ridge Laboratory. They have a high-level radioactive one operating. In Oak Ridge, Tennessee, they have a high-level radioactive incinerator operating. They have a mixed one as well at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, operating. At Rocky Flats in Golden, they've got a mixed one that they're planning. And at the SRS Aiken, South Carolina, they've got a mixed one that they're constructing and a radiation one on standby. So that is, they're getting ready to burn this stuff, They're literally getting ready to burn this stuff. And when they do, they're going to, let's just given that they're going to get most of the radiation out of the exhaust, but though they probably won't, it doesn't matter, because radiation is radiation. It doesn't matter if it's in the air or where. Once we pull it out of the ground and create it, it's there. You can't. The only way to get rid of it is you can't. It will be there for the next, deadly at least, for the next million years. Think about how long that is. And so what are we going to do? Where's our million-year solution? They didn't think about that, did they? They just thought about the bottom line and the money that they were going to make. So much money. You know, compared to coal or oil, I mean, how many tons and tons of coal and oil do you got to move around to generate 1 gigawatt of electricity? But how, you know, that one fuel bundle, well, over its life, probably will generate 1 gigawatt of electricity. You know, they're only able to get just 30% of the energy potential energy out of these fuel bundles. And I think the reason they're only able to get that is because as they process, the levels of plutonium go up and up and up and up, and you run a real risk of getting to a critical mass of plutonium, at which point it explodes in a fission event. If you have enough of those in one place, though you would get a low yield, you could have a mass fission event where you have a literal megaton-sized nuclear bomb go off. That is why they pull them out. Okay, that's why they pull them out. That's why they stick them in the borinated fuel pool to stop them from fissioning anymore. Because if they continue to fission until they're cooled down, then they will eventually turn into bombs. Because that's how you breed plutonium. That's what they are. They're a breeder reactor. They react. Their reaction creates plutonium. And plutonium is that wonderful stuff that if you get enough of it in one place at one time, it'll blow up. You know, and when you're talking a reactor full of 100 tons of fuel rods, you know, and they are now with this new generation 3 and 4, they're like, well, they're so safe. We can put twice as many, 3 times as many fuel bundles into the reactor core and not worry about it. So that's what they're doing, and that is creating yet more and more of these spent, quote unquote, fuel bundles. They aren't spent at all. They're loaded with plutonium. So, what can we do? What can we do? We can demand that they figure something else out, that they do the molten salt thing. You know, we can show up at every license hearing that they have and just create enough noise to where they got to stop what they're doing for a minute, and that creates that it lowers the incentive for them, because the government's not making any money, the contractors aren't making any money, you know, but they'll be like, well, I'll just pass it on to the next generation, it'll be all right, you know, all this radioactive waste and mixed, and you know, the Hanford tanks, they're still sitting there. Those tunnels are full of train cars full of mixed waste. And a lot of it's high-level mixed waste, you know. And I'm surprised that they haven't actually proposed they've got 2 mixed waste plants proposed for Hanford. So that means that the liquid waste at Hanford will be shipped to New Mexico, most likely, the Los Alamos, where they will burn it in their radiation one. So, yeah, we're talking glove boxes and beams and pipes and wires, and everything that comes out of those plants is radioactive. And so they have to do something with it. And so what they're doing is they're burning it. You know, it's just so silly, so silly. It's hard for me, like I said earlier, to maintain my sane environmentalism. You know, but the more I look, the more I see that we have action that needs to be taken. You know, that We need to organize. We need to unite behind understanding the damage that we're doing to our world, to our ecosystem. Understand that this is not something that the next generation, yeah, you can pass it down to the next generation. I feel sorry for them, though. Every generation will get worse and worse. And a good example of that, okay, and this is steering directly away. We are taking a right now, folks. We're going to take a right, and we're going to go to northeastern Oklahoma. Somebody mentioned this Tar Creek area, in Pitcher, Oklahoma. And I'm like, they mentioned it as the most polluted place in the United States. And I'm like, what? So I whipped out the Google Earth and I zoomed in and I was stunned. I'm like, from 10,000 feet, you could see, what is that, sand piles or mountains or what the heck? It's these white areas all around there, big white areas. And I zoomed in and I zoomed in. And it turns out that they are actually chat piles from the mining that was done, dating all the way back to the early 1900s. They say 60% of the lead and zinc for World War I and World War II came out of the ground in this 1,000 square mile area, I would say. It says, and this is on Wikipedia, it was declared a Superfund site in '83, located in the cities of Pitcher and Carden in northeastern Oklahoma. From 1900 to the 1960s, lead mining and zinc mining companies left open chat piles behind until the present day. The dust has blown around the city containing these metals, cadmium and others. These metals have also seeped into groundwater ponds and lakes, many of which are still used by children for swimming. Elevated lead, zinc, and manganese levels in the Pitcher children have led to learning disabilities and other problems. The EPA declared Pitcher to be one of the most toxic areas in the United States. And so they have these giant, literally giant mountains of this white, fine-looking stuff, and they call it chat. And it's when they pulled the ore out of the ground and they processed it right there. They melted the lead and the zinc, whatever they wanted out of it, and then this was the leftovers, and they just dumped it in big piles. And they dumped it in big piles, and to the point where you have mountains of this stuff. And pretty much do a Google Earth search for Pitcher, Oklahoma, okay, and zoom in and go to Street View, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Pretty much the town's deserted because everybody was dying, and the EPA ended up buying most of the people out. The people, they were suffering high rates of miscarriages and neurological damage to children as a result of the lead, because lead is really extra dangerous to small children, and it's a 3-state area that is just completely, overwhelmingly toxified, and needs to be cleaned up. All that crap needs to be put in the ground again. But if you think about it, that is the generational nature of what we're doing here. It was generations. It took generations to create, and now we're going to have generations worth of nobody can live in that area. Basically, everybody's moved out. The few people that are stubborn and staying there are sickly. They have no infrastructure. The cities are dead. Okay, and that's just a small example. And there's no way that you can clean it up, really. What are you going to do? You can't put it back in the ground. You're stuck with it. Once you pull it out of the ground, you're stuck with it. You can't put it back, Especially when you have mountains that were produced over a 60-year period. So they say they're trying to clean it up, but what can you do with it? Maybe solidify it. Probably what they would end up doing is putting it in the ocean or something. There, it'll be okay. Ocean can handle lead. I mean, lead's heavy. It'll sink to the bottom, right? I don't think so. So we really need to unite, folks. And again, I want to give a shout out to Lonnie Clark for giving me this opportunity. I want to give a shout out to the Sane Environmentalist.org. I think that's a very, very important thing. You need to go to this site, okay? You need to, especially if you live in California. SANONOFRE safety.org. And because she's a soldier and needs our support. I also have, like I said, a YouTube channel at the Sane Environmentalist. Just search YouTube for that. I should pop up, and I have quite a few videos. So and you can contact me there as well. I have my email address in every video, so you can email me if you want to. Life is good, folks, and we have to preserve it. And instead of just falling into gloom, or even worse than that, just ignoring it and fearing that the next generation will take care of this, we need to take action here, today, and now. And that action has to be organized. And maybe that's my mission, is to organize. I'm going to be taking a bike trip down the coast of the United States, entirely around the coastline of the United States in this next year or so. So I may be doing my show from the road at that point. Who knows? And so my mission is to educate people and to bring awareness to the situations as it stands in a real way, in a sane way. That's why I call myself Sane Environmentalist. I want to know what is really going on. If there isn't a problem, then there isn't a problem, and I'll report, yay, we don't have a problem. If there is a problem, well, you're going to hear about it. I'm going to let you know, A, what's there, and B, what I think we should do about it. And with this, like I said, go to Sane Environmentalist Safety. Look at these incinerators that are being permitted still, and see for yourself what's going on here. It's kind of a scary thing. So I got this last 2 minutes. I'm trying to figure this out because this is pretty much the first time I've ever really used Skype. So I think I'm figuring it out pretty good. I hope that I came through good and the sound is decent. If it wasn't, like I said, let me know. And I think we have a chat room. I ought to check that, I logged in there this morning, so we'll see how that goes. 2 minutes of dead air here. That's not going to happen. So, at this point, I realized that doing a radio show... Yay!